but you sort of get the idea. One other cool idea that was in here was the idea that you could highlight unused items. So imagine that you could go through a menu and you could actually see the ones that you hadn't used before that might help you sort of discover all sorts of new things. So those are a couple of the conceptual prototypes that we had. Other just random things that were sort of different than what we ended up with. This was like, well, what if you had sort of menus at the top, but they had sort of full-page UI attached to them, so it actually took the entire screen up to show you stuff. This was something called the ring task menu, which there was sort of a ring that floated around in the upper left-hand corner, and you could sort of go to a space where you would manage all of your features, and so you'd have like an alphabetical list of all of them over here on the side, and you could see your history of when you've used it. And in fact, this is a sort of calendar of all of the days of the week and how many and what features you've used on what days. It's kind of wonky, and I'm not sure that it actually would have been a great direction to go. But this is what conceptual prototypes are all about, sort of trying out random ideas and sort of seeing what seemed good. So in September and October of 2003, there was a lot of fighting. I was trying to think of a nicer word. There's a lot of disagreement within the team about how different a new UI should be. Should it be radically different? Should it be incrementally better than menus and toolbars? Like, what should it really be like? And these were a few of stabs that people on the team took of things that were more iterative, where you keep menus and toolbars around, but you just sort of add on top of them. So here is one in which you keep some of the menus, file and edit and format and tools, but then some other ones move over here into sort of a task pane-like thing, where your picture commands are here and the things that go with the picture commands show up below it. I'm not sure that would have ended up being so great because you have UI on both sides of your screen. This is a little better version of that, where you sort of take the menus and you put the toolbar buttons that belong with the menus sort of next to them. So the things that are on the edit menu and the edit commands go under that. And then some of them you, like format, you turn out into a big pane because there's so many formatting commands where you can actually show some dialog box-based content inside of it. Again, a sort of okay idea. So now I'm going to show you the earliest pictures of the ribbon that ever existed. And this was, the first one of this is from October 9th, 2003, which is sort of the night the ribbon was born. And I think you're going to be really impressed by this first picture. So basically what we did was we took a blank canvas and pasted in the standard and formatting toolbars and then started to draw tabs above them. And it's like, oh, what if you had tabs that took you between the toolbars? Okay, not that exciting actually. But within the hour, we had sort of fleshed it out to something that looked more like this, where, okay, well, you've got some tabs at the top, and maybe they're organized around tasks, and you start to figure out, well, what would it take to organize stuff out? Like, what kind of layouts would we have inside of ribbon tabs? Would this work or not? The reason this ended up being called the ribbon, by the way, is that the pictures that led up to this, the idea was, if you envision like a medieval scroll, like the old style scroll, you had like paper towel tube, and like piece of paper that would scoop between them, and you'd like roll it up. That was one of the ideas we had, that maybe you have this thing, and instead of tabs, you like roll it to the side to see more of your commands. That was realized would be a stupid idea because you'd have to scroll past like all of the commands to get from like this one to this one. And I happen to call that thing the ribbon, and so then when we did the tab-based version of it, we also called that the ribbon, and it was designed to be an internal code name, and it just sort of stuck. So that's why it's called the ribbon. But by later that night, you can see that we started to be like, okay, well, you're probably going to need some sort of grouping within the ribbon. So we've started to come up with groups. We called them chunks at the time. One thing that we did throughout the early pictures, I mentioned that we did everything possible to get people thinking about the design tenets. All of the early prototypes we made, we always, when we used Word, we always put the design tenet document inside the picture. So this is what all of our pictures look like, and they actually had my design tenets document inside the pictures, so that everyone that looked at the pictures had to read the design tenets while they were going. It was just another trick to try to get people to read the design tenets. And by the 10th, the day after it, you can see we started to come up with the idea of galleries and integrating the first gallery in here. And this was the first gallery we ever drew, which is like, hey, what if we could put some picture-like things? That would be a better way of showing this stuff than text. Another early area of UI we started looking at was UI that's floated nearby the cursor. And the reason for this is something called Fitts' law. And Fitts' law, simplified, basically talks about the relationship between how close an object is to your mouse cursor and how big it is to how easy it is to acquire that target. So a huge button that's far away is easy. A small button that's close to the cursor is easy. And then as you move further away or get smaller, it gets harder. So the idea here was if we could put a bunch of UI next to the cursor, then it would be very, very easy to go click it. It would be very simple. And so we started working on different ways of taking UI and putting it sort of around the cursor, and how would that make sense? And of course, this turned into the mini toolbar. We called this floaty at the time. So yeah, maybe you can put stuff all around. This becomes a problem because if you have more than like one line of text selected, then your whole text ends up getting obscured. It pretty much only works when you have 3 words. This was an idea we had, which is maybe you can defy WYSIWYG, which is to say, imagine if the way that you make room for the floating UI is actually when it's up, you push the rest of the stuff out of the way. We called this the scoocher, which is just like maybe you move everything out of the way to make room for it. And so those were early ideas we had that developed into the mini toolbar. Probably the single most important pictures we drew during Office 2007 was a set of pictures that we drew pretty much 3 days straight. I don't think we left. I remember sleeping on the floor of the office and eating like bran O's or something, that's some box of cereal someone had in their office, but designing this prototype that at the time we were drawing Word blue and Excel green and PowerPoint purple, PowerPoint red, and we decided that we needed to draw a set of pictures that found out whether it was possible to fit all of the commands of an app inside the ribbon. Like, we'd drawn some ribbon pictures, but we had a lot of concerns that there wouldn't be enough room, that we literally couldn't fit all the commands we needed to. So we knew we had to pick an app, and we picked PowerPoint to just figure out a place for everything to live, to prove it out. And because we picked PowerPoint, which we did because it has the fewest commands, so if we couldn't make PowerPoint work, we sure as heck weren't going to be able to make Word work. And we called the set Tomatoey because it was used in a tomatoey red color because we used PowerPoint. But this is what someone on my team called it, Tomatoey, but I read it as Tom and Tooey. I'm like, why are we calling this set of prototypes Tom and Tooey? And that just sort of stuck. So they're called the Tom and Tooey prototypes, and they're pretty much the most important ones. But I don't know why it's called Tom and Tooey. Anyway, it's a dumb story. But here they are. So Tom and Tooey was the first time that we took all of the commands and tried to find a home for them. So how many tabs do we have to have? 13? 7? 50? We didn't really know. So in this prototype, we accounted for everything that we needed. And you can see a lot of the things that ended up in the product were sketched out even at this early date. So we had the idea of in-ribbon galleries. We had groups. We had insert tab, and we had a slide design tab, and we had a view tab and a review tab. We had this idea that we could show transitions with pictures as opposed to having to use words to describe them. We had the idea that you could bring dialog box-like content into the ribbon. And this is another example of that. This ended up being a much bigger ribbon than what we ended up shipping. This is a 4 tall high ribbon as opposed to a 3 tall high ribbon. But Tom and Tooey was the prototype that sort of made us believe that the ribbon was possible. See, the quick access toolbar was present even at that point as well. So then there was a lot of discussions about, shouldn't the ribbon be better on the side? Like, why do you put it on the top? Maybe it would be better on the side. And so there are lots of pictures we did of the ribbon on the side. In this case, with the tabs at the top, where you'd click the tabs and they would sort of activate the thing on the side. This works pretty well for Word when it has usually a lot of negative space there. It doesn't work as well in Excel, where the columns are actually more valuable than the rows. Here's another picture of sort of better ribbon content where we actually have groups, very similar to what we ended up with over there. Here's one which is like, maybe you can have sort of big buttons over here, and as you click on them, they activate sort of more UI, and you can keep like tiling UI on top of it. And then here's sort of the final one where we actually take the tabs totally off the top and put them down here at the bottom. There were 2 reasons we didn't end up doing the ribbon on the side and we did it on the top. Number one is people felt much more comfortable using UI at the top. Whenever we put people in the lab and watched them use this, people felt very weird about going to the side. It didn't feel natural, and it didn't feel like Office. The second thing was my belief that if we had done the UI on the side, it would have devolved into a scrollable list. That it's so easy to solve scaling on the side via